All right, everybody, this is Mr. Composition, the MC that writes fiction, and this is the Texas CBD Fair and Market. And today we have special guest Nadia. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good, enjoying this Texas heat, and goodness gracious, eventually the room that I'm in, it's like there's like everywhere else you can have like AC unit, but this specific room because it will short circuit a bunch of stuff. So I'm like, yeah, but
Oh
it's all good.
no. So you're sitting in the heat right now?
Well, there's like a fan.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's good. It's good. I'm not like
refrigerator.
dripping sweat, so that's good. If that was the case, I would totally, yeah, be somewhere else. But you're with Blaze Therapeutics, and so the first question I like to do, so that way listeners and viewers can be able to get to know you a little bit, is what is it that you do, and how did you get started in it?
So Blaze Therapeutics, it's the first and currently only responsible distribution company that's dedicated to serving the holistic product and dietary supplement industry. And so right now, we specialize heavily on distributing CBD to healthcare professionals in the rare disease space and the veteran space because our products are responsibly distributed. So what that means is that we test every single lot and product, every single lot that comes through. We actually send it out for additional testing to the same lab that the manufacturers submit their certificates of analysis to and make sure they match up. And unfortunately, 80% of them don't. And so we've been very, very busy. Just not all of the products that we distribute are available online because we have to buy from lot to lot, and we have to service our wholesalers first before we can even make it available to the public, kind of like I guess like Costco and BJ's are wholesale clubs. And so like whatever the wholesalers don't buy up, then we like when there's 10 to 20 products left from that lot, then we make it available online. So not all the products are online.
I got you. And so one of the things that you mentioned, and I love this phrase, being that Texas just got into, as far as even into the hemp world in general, once that started to happen, it was just like an influx, and just everybody was just all like, yes, he was like, I'm gonna get into the business, da, 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 da. And one of the things that you mentioned is that almost like over 80% of people are not in compliance now. That coming from Texas, or is that coming from other places going through you?
That's literally not like all over the country. Unfortunately, we are continuously testing products. We've tested up to 90 different brands, and within brands there are like several different products. And so we've done an excessive amount of testing, and we still are. And whether a product is labeled full spectrum and it's isolate, or it claims to have CBD in it and it doesn't, or everything is accurate except it's contaminated with heavy metals or pesticides. And so there's literally almost every way of failing a test we've seen at this point. And so it's really, really scary as someone that consumes CBD regularly for health purposes. And so that's what's kind of motivated our team, is to keep doing this, even though it's a lot of work, because once a product fails, we have to, just based on contracts, we have to send it back. So we can't necessarily stop. We can't throw it away like it should be thrown away. We have to send it back to the manufacturer and wait to see if that manufacturer will send us another product to then get tested. And so it's been nonstop shipping back to manufacturers, unfortunately. And we have a whole network of people that are in vendors that we are servicing. So we're constantly trying to keep up and assuming that the next lot is going to fail so that we can have enough for when the orders come in. So it's been excessive.
Oh, I can only imagine. Why do you think that is, as far as the large amount, because a lot of people, I realize they're getting into it. Me personally, I have my, my as far as multimedia business, but then I have a health and wellness business that's tarot and astrology and CBD. And so I don't have to worry about a storefront, you know, so a lot of the things that I'm able to do um, with a smaller, you know, unit to deal with, a lot of these places that went and jumped to get storefronts, they're, you know, almost like, well, you know, if no one says anything type of thing, then let's go ahead and, you know, continue going. But do you think that the reason being is because they have a lot of overhead, or like, what do you think is the reason
It's
behind?
money. It's money. It's because
Yeah.
if a product fails testing, like that whole lot fails, like, no, man, it's contaminated with lead. Now we have to throw that away because it's already packaged. It's in its final packaging. You can't just open up those packages and clean them. If you're going to clean a product, it has to already be in its before it's packaged into it or brought into its final packaging. So, and there are decontamination processes because of just the nature of hemp. Hemp naturally absorbs any sort of pesticides and toxins from the soil. It can clean, it's been used to clean soil for other products. So we understand this natural inclination for hemp to grow contaminated. Honestly, hemp should, if it's used for medicinal purposes, should be grown just like how medical cannabis is indoors, but that's a whole other thing. At this point, before manufacturers create their products, they need to make sure that their products are free of contaminants and are accurate. And then you have to also take into account that CBD degrades very readily in UV light with heat. And so if the temperature, like our facility, we have to make sure all the products are maintained at the appropriate temperature. And then we also inform our wholesale clients how to store the products. It's super important. If you keep your product out in light, those stores, those well-lit stores, the CBD is literally degrading as we speak, you know? So there's a lot of CBD products, if they're not in UV protectant bottles, or if they're, the bottles also should be in boxes to try and really preserve the CBD. And then if the temperature is not kept right, there's so many factors. And then of course, the stability of the formulation. And so we find out all of that because we get the COA, the certificate of analysis, from the manufacturer, and then we send it out the products that we receive from the manufacturer for additional testing to the same lab. So there's no like lab variations, because, you know, you can send one product to 5 different labs and get 5 different results. And so we take that variable out, and then the people that purchase from us have 2 certificates of analysis to go off of. And so then they know the rate of degradation that CBD goes through, because we're getting it later. So, you know, the CBD amount will be lower than the manufacturer's COA. And if it's not, then there's a problem. And so we've also experienced some labs that screwed up and the CBD went up, and that's actually chemically impossible. And so we were able to even identify some labs that weren't doing the right thing. And so this whole process has been so eye-opening in terms of the industry.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. So like you have a very unique view, because you also use it, as well as, you know, you're in the labs with this as well. So from both ends, what are you looking for in the back end as far as for, you know, making sure that these pass? And then what are you looking for as a consumer?
Well, as a consumer, I look for the same things. Like I look for it to be responsibly distributed. And when the qualifications for responsible distribution are found online for free, we make it available. But the first step is reading the ingredients. Everyone that purchases CBD or any product on the open market should first read the ingredients. Don't get tricked by a holistic look, or the brand just looks kind of like speaks to you. You know, like that's great if it speaks to you, that means you have to turn around next and read the ingredients, because a lot of the times those ingredients are not something that you want to actually consume in your body. And that includes, you know, the artificial flavors, the if it's natural flavors, we actually then go to the manufacturer and request what are those natural flavors, because that's a broad term. And there are chemicals that are termed natural flavors because they're derived in the lab from natural sources. And then they are literally the same chemical as the artificial flavors. It's just they get to call it natural flavors. And so, and people have, in the rare disease space at least, and the immunocompromised individuals, we have reactions to them. And so we actually need like extracts. We need like extracts from lemon, and, you know, not lemon artificial flavor. And so we go through the actual ingredients first. And then if the ingredients look promising, then we contact the manufacturer, we let them know how we work. If they're interested, some contracts are signed, and then we get a few products. And then we go through like patient-reported clinical trials. And so we send them out to, based on their formulation, some formulations are more applicable to certain diseases. And so if we have access to the rare disease space and veterans space, and so we distribute the products for tests to see if they have a high clinical potential or high therapeutic potential. And if they come back that they do, based on the reports, then we discuss entering into distribution. That just means we get the lot in of that product that passed all the preliminary tests, and then we test that lot to make sure that what we received is what's actually what we actually tested and what they claim to have sent us. And a lot of the times, a lot of products get stuck at that point. And so we go through all this testing, and it's like great, and we're like so happy, and then we receive this big lot of product, and it's not what the label says it is, or it's contaminated. And so a lot of products get stopped at that point, but some do move forward, and then they fly off the shelves. And so we're hoping that more and more brands can actually learn the benefits of being responsibly distributed, and that consumers make sure they look out for it, because there's literally no other way to know what you're consuming. And so we're hoping that, you know, even right now we distribute majorly to doctors and clinical oriented companies, but we're hoping that just regular vendors will want to make sure, because it's a liability issue too. If you sell a product that has higher than the legally allowed THC levels, then you can get in trouble. Your company can get in trouble. Or if you're selling products that really make your customers sick because it's contaminated with a certain amount of heavy metals that over time will accrue and poison the person, then, you know, there could be some liability issues there. So we take that liability away from our vendors, which are healthcare professionals, which are a little bit more concerned about liability. But we're hoping that other businesses will also realize that they have a responsibility to public health as well.
Oh yeah, you know, and I think that, so with looking at as far as the people that are getting tested, healthcare facilities and different things like that, you know, in my line, as far as going these fairs and markets, you know, I get a lot of people that, you know, either own a store or they're just kind of like mom and pop, got a couple, you know, things on wholesale and different things like that. For those people, what are some price ranges that they're looking at as far as to get their stuff checked? And within that, is there a kind of a, I wouldn't say an easier process, but what can, you know, somebody like me with this platform where there's a bunch of different vendors that see this, how can people like myself be able to inform people and let them know, like, hey, this may cost this much, but legal fees are more than this. Like, so what can
And
I do?
medical fees.
And medical fees, yeah.
But that's the thing. So every test averages between $500, $600. We take on that cost and we don't inflate the cost of the product. And so we just take a lower profit margin than your typical distributors take. And so the MSRP is the MSRP that it's set by the manufacturers, and we don't increase it just because we're taking these extra steps and spending some extra money. We just don't make as much profit as the traditional distributors do, but there's enough profit to be made to do this. And so we're just not, being excessively greedy at the end of the day. And so if you're a manufacturer, it's in your brand's benefit to be responsibly distributed, because then now you're telling your consumers that you're not afraid of being tested, that and if for whatever reason something slides through, because sometimes the bottles are contaminated. Sometimes the bottles are the ones that contaminate, or the packaging is what contaminates the product. And so you don't know that until we tell you, hey, your product failed, you're gonna have to do an investigation. And so we are that double check. And every single distributor should be doing this, but most distributors aren't, because at this point with the fail rate, it's so high that they don't want to take on this responsibility, as our previous employers didn't want to do. And so if you're consumers, if you really want to make sure that your products are clean and labeled accurately, you're gonna have to spend a lot of money. You're gonna have to buy 2 products from the same lot and then send one of those out for lab testing, and then pay between $500 and $600 for a full workup. And so that's not feasible for your average consumer. And so that's why we make an effort to make them available online. That's literally the only reason why we even have an online shop, is because it's just not feasible for your average person to make sure their products are clean and labeled accurately. And people need this. Like, if this wasn't I wish someone else could do this, because I'm also involved in New Love Venture and the rare advocacy movement. I have a lot on my plate. Like, we have to do this because no one else is. And so we're hoping the industry can just embrace this concept of being responsible, and consumers demand it. And that way, we can avoid the future issues of not only consequences legally for the industry. We don't want to give the FDA any reason to shut this industry down, and we want to make sure people are protected and healthy.
Oh yeah, and it seems like we have even another layer to all of this because of COVID. And so it's like more important than ever, to really take initiative to really get this going. And so what I want to talk about is, you mentioned it, the New Love Venture and the rare advocacy. Can you let us know, like, what are those? What do you do as far as with those?
So I guess New Love Venture, so Emjayze Therapeutics is a subsidiary of New Love Ventures. So New Love Ventures is a humanitarian VC company. It's literally like the anti-VC company. Typically, VC companies are all about profit taking over companies, and kind of a little have reputations of being malicious. But so we decided to open up a humanitarian VC company that only supports companies that are dedicated to improving the world, humankind, and human lives in general, philanthropic. And of course, the projects have to be sustainable. We are business minded, but we don't typically just follow the money. Like, of course we follow money, but we also follow intentions and incentives, and it has to be rooted in improving the world. And so that's what New Love Ventures is. It's all about, and so it's called New Love because it's a call to action for everyone, to all humans, to embrace the human culture. And we have yet to do that as a society or as a world. And so it's a new love that we're asking everyone to consider embracing. And so that's why we called it New Love.
No, that's super awesome. You know, that's one of the things I think about, because I see one of the things that I, you know, naturally am drawn to is patterns. And so that whether that's societal patterns, you know, just human patterns, nature patterns, like there's something that I constantly see when it comes to history and what's going on now. You know, I look at some of the just the craziness that we're dealing with in America as far as health. You know, something that I came across was like the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio that we're dealing with as far as here in America, where on average, you know, if you're not eating meat, you want to have something like almost like a 2 to 2, 2 to 1 omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, with, you know, the majority of it being omega-3s. But what we're seeing in America is something like 26 omega-6s to 1 omega-1, with the majority of stuff that we're taking in or what's available to us. And when we see this rise in omega-6s, we're seeing like the increase of depression, schizophrenia, different things like that. A lot of these reoccurring illnesses. So when I look at us as humans just navigating through this, it's very interesting that you call it New Love, because it's just all like, I feel like we should be a little bit further as far as just within our interactions with humans. You know, it's all like we kind of do these amazing stuff with technology, or like building pyramids and like all of these things, but like when it comes to the interaction of people, it's almost like we're still in prehistoric times there.
Yeah, yeah, and we're seeing that, but there's kind of like two different types of people nowadays. It's the people that see it, you know, that understand the need for us to all unite and understand that we all are human, and regardless of what we look like, regardless of what skin color we are, regardless of what facial features we have. And then there are the other ones that are the function in fear, and they fear differences, and they're easily I think they struggle with narcissism, and they can't see past themselves, and it doesn't matter what the majority might be saying, doesn't matter what logic makes sense. At the end of the day, if it feels threatening, then they're rejecting it. And rejecting it in a very toxic way for everyone else.
Yeah, you know, and I think that a lot of that's still like I feel like your health is definitely plays a big role, like, and that's why I feel like, you know, why it's so important with as far as responsibly distributed, you know, because what, you know, smoking or intaking a lot of these, whether by pre-rolls or by gummies or by edibles and different things like that, you know, what you put in your mouth is a very intimate thing, you know. So it's just all like when you're unsure on what's going on, you know, that's how a lot of, you know, kings got poisoned by you know, it's like straight up through food, you know. We kind of are very relaxed when it comes to the things that we put in our body. What do you think that what do you think is the solution for that, as far as not just with responsibly distributed, but just with the nonchalant way of like anything, whether that be chips, you know, the fruit that we consume from the supermarket, you know, just someone like, hey, try this, or we're like, cool, it's free, you know, like, how do you think, you know, we can improve on that?
It's education, because at the end of the day, if you a lot of people, they look at shelves and they trust that there was some sort of process that allowed that product to be placed on that shelf. And unfortunately, when you really look into it and you get educated, there really isn't a process other than selling to the store, a manufacturer selling that to the store, or a distributor selling it to the store. There's no real checks and balances. We've been trying to, even with dietary supplements, manufacturers monitor themselves. And then everyone else just has to trust that they did the appropriate testing and that the product is labeled accurately. And then if it kills or hurts a mass group of people, then we are dependent on that, at least one person submitting a report to the FDA, and then the FDA eventually following up. And it takes forever if anything's going to get recalled. And so it's a broken system. And so when people realize the actual consequences and pay attention, when you actually adjust your eating and you start eating real food, you actually start losing an interest in all the processed chemicals. And when you finally it gets reintroduced, you're just like, wait, this doesn't feel right. You start noticing your body feels different. And so a lot of the people that have chronic illnesses and chronic conditions, they kind of go through that journey first, but we need people that are healthy, that are not necessarily dealing with daily discomforts, to want to educate themselves as well and not wait until their body deteriorates from all these toxins that we're just naturally inclined and taught to just consume. And I'm a victim of that as well. I had to wait until my body deteriorated to even do research on how to get it back, until what kind of malnutrition or, what kind of minerals I'm missing and what kind of vitamins. And that's when I looked into the dietary supplement industry and found that really you have to have blind trust. And with Blaze looking at vitamins, we have yet to be able to sell any sort of real vitamin supplements because they all fail or they refuse to get tested. And that was one of the goals of Blaze, is to test actual, vitamin A, vitamin B, B12, like all those vitamins. So we finally know which brands are actually good brands that are bioavailable, all of that. But unfortunately, the dietary supplement does not want to be monitored. And that's something that the public needs to ask for. They need to request it. They need to stop buying just blindly.
Yeah, and I think that education and knowledge is something that I hear, in this industry so much, because it's so important to get the correct information out. There will be some people who unfortunately will have some influence, and because they're YouTube researchers and different things like that, they miss a lot of correct information, and I'll come across certain workshops and they're just completely saying some of the wrong stuff. So that's another reason why I like being able to have these interviews, so that way people are able to get it from the people who are actually in these fields. So one of the things I wanted to ask is, so what was your first experience with cannabis or CBD or both? Well, let's walk us through that fateful day.
It was in 2012, the medical marijuana program in Montana. I was an outpatient, applicant, and they accepted me. And it was because I was born with 3 rare conditions, and the combo of the 3 has resulted in I live in chronic pain from my waist down. It's excessive leg pain from waist all the way down to toes. And it's neurological. There's damage everywhere. It's just a mess. And so instead of getting into a wheelchair and pretty much atrophying and losing my ability to walk, I ended up going on a journey of trying to figure out how to tolerate the pain, because I'm opioid resistant. And so I've tried all the opioids and under the sun up to fentanyl. And fentanyl was like aspirin for the pain. It ends up kind of curbing the sharpness, but there was nothing I discovered that could actually take the pain away from the pharmaceutical side of things. And so I went to pharmacy school, so I remember being told that cannabis was a gateway drug and believing it, but then realizing that they didn't show any clinical evidence. Like, there was no evidence. That was just a statement that we just accepted. But every other drug that they presented to us, we had to learn the mechanism of action, and we had to learn how it actually interacts with the body. Like, we have a lot of information. But with cannabis, there wasn't any information. There wasn't any evidence as to why it was a gateway drug. And so I even still have like the book that says that, you know, and it dawned on me that, like, I need to actually do research and figure out, like, because they said opioids were so bad that you could get addicted and you experience all this, you know, these euphoric effects, but I didn't. I have not experienced once a euphoric effect with opioids. And if it doesn't work, then I stop taking it and I don't have any withdrawals. And so people that tend to abuse opioids are because they don't actually have like the physical ailments, the physical pain. They're dealing with more emotional pain. And so I was trying to tackle physical pain. And so we have to understand these little subgroups. And so I was like, okay, you know, maybe cannabis, I have to explore what that is. And so I looked at it. I started looking at the clinical studies that came out of Israel. And I was just like, there's actually evidence for cannabis, and there's no evidence of it being a gateway drug other than the anecdotal data that came from, I guess, people that ended up becoming drug abusers. And so they all started with cannabis, but those people were struggling with emotional things. And so it didn't make sense to apply that to the entire spectrum or even make that conclusion. And so I went to the medical marijuana program in Montana, met with doctors, and they were so advanced. It was amazing. They looked at my condition. There was like an actual lab that paired, like, it was like precision medicine for cannabis, where they actually took the time. I had to be there for 2 weeks just to figure out what my dose was, what was appropriate for my body, what strain was appropriate for my body. And we found a strain combo that worked. And it was better than fentanyl. I felt like I got my life back. But I needed to maintain that dose because it only worked for a few hours and then it would go away. And so I had to figure out, okay, I don't need fentanyl anymore. So I got off of fentanyl, and because fentanyl was just taking the sharpness away, but it wasn't actually treating my pain. And so I was so excited. I was making trips to Montana that I know was illegal because I was crossing state lines, but it was the only thing that was getting me through college. And then the federal government shut down the program, and I couldn't get my medicine anymore. And they took everything. They took the computers, they took everything, all the data, everything. And so I had to go back on to at least fentanyl just to survive, just to deal with the pain. And after years, then the CBD industry started opening up because of Epidiolex. And so I've been on fentanyl for years because I couldn't access that. And the thing is, I was being walked through, like, what was the appropriate strain for me? What was my appropriate dose? That doesn't even happen today. Like, you go to the dispensary and it's like, okay, I guess I'll try that. If it doesn't work, then you have to go back and I guess I'll try that. And it's like Russian roulette. You might get lucky in finding what strain works for you and what dose works for you. But then you might not be able to find it again because the next time they don't have it in stock. And so there's no consistency in today's market. And so that's what I found in California, because once California's open their market, I went over there to try and see if I can identify my medicine again. And I have yet. I know it's a combination between Ringo's Gift and Blue Dream, but to find those two combos, it's like impossible. And then I'm on the East Coast, and thanks to COVID, so I have to work with CBD now. CBD has reduced my seizures, so regularly have seizures, but I'm lucky where it doesn't affect my cognition. But it does sometimes affect my mobility, or sometimes in the mornings I can't speak, and so I have my cognition, but my actual ability to speak is affected until, I guess, the CBD kicks in, because it looks like CBD might have some neuroregenerative effects that I'm benefiting from. And so I've found myself to be very dependent on CBD. And that's why I'm so dedicated to making sure that I'm not also, along with anyone else who purchases from Blaze, we're not consuming toxins on top of everything we're dealing with and in trying to treat. We're actually getting the appropriate dose, because CBD is based on your weight. Your dose is based on your weight. And not everyone's dose is going to be the same. And so you have to know what's in the product so that you can dose yourself appropriately. And so, like, even when people purchase from us, we give them a dosing guide. And then you need to be aware that you need to talk to your doctor and make sure that your liver enzymes are not elevated, because CBD is metabolized by cytochrome P450 enzymes. And you have to make sure that your liver can handle the dose that you're taking. And so there's a lot of education that comes into it, that we're trying to say, like, look, this is not just something you just take as a, feel good, and who cares what the dose is. There can be consequences if it builds up. And it does, there are drug interactions that CBD can cause some serious issues. And so we make ourselves available to help guide healthcare professionals and patients that, don't have healthcare professionals that they can talk to, in order to help them, guide them through this market. Because unfortunately, the programs that were amazing, that at least that I experienced in Montana, they currently don't exist.
That's unfortunate, because one of the things that you said that was kind of like, this light bulb thing when I think about the interaction with marijuana and just the public is, we have this that we weren't taught in school, but we literally have this endocannabinoid system within us. And when you had mentioned as far as that book, and it's saying it's a gateway drug, it's just like, yeah, it's a gateway to ourselves, or just learning more about that. Because the thing is that the more and more that I learn about that system, and I could be definitely mistaken, but to me, it sounds like it is a natural regulator, like just your personal regulator for the different things that you intake. And what I just find so interesting is that middle school, and the thing was that I loved science of every single kind, so I would have remember I learned everything from the all other type of systems, but it was just all like, yeah, then you got the respiratory system, and this, and then endocannabinoid system, and we're going to skip over that, and then we're going to go over to here. And so why do you think that is? This is something that is a part of us, but it's almost like this super secretive thing, and I know that can go many different ways, as far as just what people have done in the past, as far as like just keeping your past under wraps and different things like that. But why do you think that is?
So the endocannabinoid system's like the body's mechanism to, like, it's like a thermostat, right? What a house, like a smart house, if it gets too warm, the AC kicks in. But if it gets too hot, or if it gets too hot, the AC kicks in. If it gets too warm, the heat kicks in, right? And so it either upregulates or downregulates our mechanisms based on what's happening to our bodies and what we're encountering. And to answer your question, it's essentially was not included in medical schools and pharmacy schools, at least. Like, even if you don't want to teach the high schoolers about it, teach the healthcare professionals about it. But it's it wasn't included because there was two arguments. Honestly, it roots back to the politics of things. They're saying like, look, we didn't want to open up that door because all we have is cannabis at this point that could even serve this or service deficiencies in the system. And so why would we teach this if, we can't even offer a product to service it? And so a lot of the doctors, even in rare diseases, sometimes when you'll stay undiagnosed forever because they don't have a treatment for you. So they feel like, well, why would you want to know the diagnosis if you can't treat it? And there's like a feeling of, I don't want to tell this patient that they have this disease and I can't, good luck, there's no way to treat it. And so it's the same thing like with the endocannabinoid system, when there's a lot of people that struggle with deficiencies in their endocannabinoid system. And that's why, we get diseases and inflammation. But to target that, then, okay, fine. We discover now our endogenous cannabinoids are like low, they're not efficiently being used, or there's not enough being made, or it's being overconsumed, whatever your issues might be. And then there's no way to correct it. It's okay, then you might as well go to cannabis, and nobody wants that. Nobody in the political sphere wants that. So that's, it kind of guided the thought process to keep the endocannabinoid system out of the medical books. But honestly, because of hemp, it kind of, the doors have been broken open, and now there's medical schools and pharmacy schools are now including it into their curriculums finally. And it's because there's products out there. It's all product money driven.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I know is I was just like, anything that just seems like it's going to be a profit, which is very interesting with why Texas is so slow burn when it comes to marijuana. Because I'm just all like, look, if y'all are talking about money here,
Texas struggles with money, but then also political beliefs. Mm-hmm. Like there's a battle, it's like an internal battle. And this has been historically ingrained, kind of like racism, right? Racism has been systemically ingrained into literally every person in this country, regardless of what color you are. And it has an effect on everyone, whether how we view ourselves as people of color or how white people view people of color. And it's literally the same exact thing. This cannabis has been systemically oppressed and stigmatized. And so now there's clinical evidence. There has already been clinical evidence, but it came from international, academia. And so now the US academics are catching up. And because of that, now we can show that it's there. All of that has been essentially a lie. It's been marketing, but it's marketing against a natural product, and for a variety of reasons.
And that's what the way that I'm seeing as far as that like stronghold is, like when I had went to Japan's struggling right now as far as their opioid crisis. The thing is, I went over there, and like if you get caught, like they're on the island, so if you magically pull up with some weed or something like that, like you're done for. Like they don't play around there. But I was thinking about CBD though. That when I was there was a lot of, not even like cigarette smoking. There definitely was, but what was interesting was the price of like the most expensive pack of cigarettes was like less than $5, and that was very fascinating. But the fact of their vape culture. And their electronic cigarette culture. And I was just all like, if ultimately I want to have like a CBD bar there, I think it would kill. But the fact that, I see as far as the way that they operate. So everything there, they treat creators like how we treat doctors here. They're very revered out there. Mm-hmm. And so when I was out there, I was just all like, okay, so they have this opioid issue, but there's also this overworking issue. People are literally like 24 hours a day. They'll go to the bar, drink like alcohol like a fish. Like the people that was showing me and my friend around for our tour, like they was just taking back drinks, and I was just like, I'm cool with this like one little, you know, thing of beer or whatever, but like it was nothing, you know. And what was so surprising to me is the fact that Japan would outlaw it. We're talking about like herbal medicine here, you know, and the fact that that could save so many people, I feel, just on something other than the opioids, you know. And there are other places, you know, that are a lot more lenient. We're seeing as far as the economic growth with that as well. Like a lot of people don't know Africa's running as far as in the hemp and cannabis industry. You know, a lot of people don't know of like all these other places that are in the running as far as just having products, distributing, manufacturing, different things like that. um, when it comes to your personal products, what would be, I know it was like a long thing to ask about this, but what would be your top four products that you've tried, whether in the medical marijuana space or the CBD space? What were like four of your top items? And then what is something that you would like to see that hasn't been created yet? Like I've seen things like clothes, they're looking at nanotechnology and everything with it. So yeah, let me know what it is that
Well, I
you're,
think hempcrete is pretty cool,
yeah,
but
yeah.
the products, the top products depend on the indication that you're treating, the issue that you're treating. We have seen CBD products currently being tested to make sure that it works for the majority. Products that can, as like if you get a burn or a break, if you're like in your the one of the healthier populations, most people, they still burn themselves, they still scratch themselves. In the rare disease space, there are diseases, collagen diseases, where the skin's just super soft and it tears very easily, and so, and it hurts. There's inflammation that's associated with it. CBD has this certain formulations that don't include any sort of cooling element, that they help with the pain, the inflammation, and the healing if they're paired with the appropriate ingredients. And so we've discovered a lot of those products that are on the market and are distributing that. But it also depends on the amount that you're taking on a regular basis. It depends on its bioavailability. So like the tinctures are great if they have the right amount of CBD in it for your weight, and because you just hold it in your tongue and it goes into your bloodstream and it works fairly quickly. But there are some CBD capsules that depends on where you want it to diffuse. If you're having GI issues, and that it's more targeted for lower GI inflammation. Or there's some vape products. We had it discovered like a year ago, a really great vape product that what kind of operated very similarly to an inhaler, and it actually was helping. It was so quick and bioavailable, where one inhale, the people that were suffering from anxiety, like PTSD, the veterans, they said, one or two inhales, depending on their weight, they automatically felt relaxed and calm and out of the attack. But it was short-lived. And so, that's where tinctures and capsules come in. But the thing is, with that product, they weren't able to keep up with the demand, and their products failed testing. And so we haven't been able to carry that product for a year. And it's so there's wonderful products out there, but unfortunately, the unpredictability of hemp and also the amateur nature of the industry, it's really hard to get consistent product. And so there are really good brands out there that are trying, but so far there hasn't been a brand to actually figure it out. Even the brand, we're working with so many brands, and we hope that one of them finally figures it out, but almost all brands have had issues. And so it's hard. You can't go. What I learned is that you can't, their brand loyalty shouldn't exist in the cannabis space. And I know it goes contrary to the human, like, just consumer DNA, because once you find a product, you want to trust it and say, it worked for me once, it worked for me twice, it's got to work for me all the time. But unfortunately, in cannabis, in dietary supplements, in the holistic product industry, there's no consistency. And so you have to be prepared to go from one brand to another, and just literally look at the results, look at the certificate of analysis. That's what tells you what the product is, and try and not be blinded by branding or manipulated by branding.
And, you know, and the United States is very awesome at that as far as like just being able to do that, you know. And I guess it's just like with being able to learn these type of things, because you know we think that being in the wellness holistic field, especially when we're dealing with plants, we're just all like, all right, so you know we got this plant, but then it's just all like, okay, there's so much that goes into that just alone, with just like you said, the pesticides and different things like that. So you're dealing with that, but then you know you're dealing with the manufacturing, where it was manufactured, different things like that. And so the packaging, you know, like whether or not, you know, if it's plastic, you know, it's BPA,
glass, like,
you know.
Yeah, exactly. People don't think about these things. Right. And you know, products degrade. Natural products degrade. You know, that's like, if you buy bread and it doesn't deteriorate, then there's something wrong with that bread. Yeah. Like anything plant derived, anything naturally derived degrades, and you have to be aware of that. Like people have to like learn to accept that.
And you know, I think it causes it's this weird thing where in one case, as a whole, we're afraid to consume quickly, you know, because we want stuff that, you know, is stored, and, you know, you have like some leftover for like a month in there and stuff like that, you know. But then there's this aspect to where, and I think it has to deal a lot with just life lessons in general, but it's just like, you know, you deal with these plants, whether you take them in your food or use them as medicine, like it's not really made to sit. Like you want to take all of it, like there, that within a couple of days type of thing. You know, but we're getting to this point where it's just this weird, it's almost like this opposite, you know, it's almost like a lot of everything is like in this mirror world, and you know we're supposed to be doing this, but like we're actually doing this. And you know, it's what do you think is, as far as for moving forward, as far as innovation that you want to see within the cannabis and CBD space in general, when it comes to regards with how we intake or how things are manufactured? What is some innovation that you think you'd like to see?
I hope more and more consumers are going to ask, like if you go into any sort of shop that sells CBD, chances are they're not going to give you a certificate of analysis to let you know what you're buying. And I want people to feel comfortable being like, all right, I'm not buying that. Not to be like, oh, well, you look nice, you wouldn't sell me anything that will hurt me, I'm going to trust you. You know, like when it has nothing to do with that salesperson, you know, it's deeper than that. Like people need to understand that it's their right, it's their money, it's their body, and they need to know what they're putting into it. They need to know how to consume it. So they need to ask questions. And if they're asking questions and the person doesn't seem to understand or give you an appropriate answer, then move on to someone else and seek out those answers. Don't be, you know, content with complacency and ignorance. And I'm hoping that if consumers start demanding that, the industry will follow. The industry goes where the money is. If consumers are demanding certificates of analysis, you know how when you have, there's package inserts for all, when you go to the pharmacy and you get your prescription, there's a package insert in there. Every single CBD product should have a package insert of the certificate of analysis, so people really know what the results are. that it's been tested, and not just the cannabinoid panel. And there needs to be residual solvents if it's a tincture or capsule. There needs to be heavy metal analysis, microbiology. There's pesticides. There needs to be a full workup so people know what they're consuming. And the batch or lot number needs to be on there. A lot of certificates of analysis don't even have the lot number on the report. So how do you know the product in hand corresponds to that that COA? They both have to have the lot numbers on it. There's even products out there that don't have lot numbers printed on there. So how do you keep track of your products? And people don't think about these things. Like when you go to the supermarket, any product that you buy that's in a box or a can or a bag, if there's no lot number on there, how are they keeping track of it? Don't buy that. It's simple.
And what's interesting is the fact that, some people will look at certain, like it'll be very choosy. Like it's all like, you know what, I'm gonna look at the label on this fine wine right here, but I will not look at the label as far as like, just some meat or like these things that are packaged. I find and I am not above. I definitely run into those myself and things like that. But the main thing that I'm trying to do is self-improvement, and I feel like the lack of asking those particular questions do stem with self, and just your normal capacity to be able to just be curious about the things around you in general. And so it's like, I feel like there's this middle ground that's like, it's this bridge that's trying to be, built. I see it in different ways and like that. But there's still, I feel like CBD and cannabis, there's so much more to explore as far as even with advertising, or even as far as getting the knowledge and the information out there. One of my biggest gripes in the CBD industry, especially the advertising of it, is kind of like these, I don't know if you might have seen it on Instagram or not, but kind of like these very basic photos of just like the tincture or like the flower, and it's like, it's super basic and it's like a uniform type of thing. And I'm just looking at more ways to include, the everyday. People look at, CBD or cannabis, and cannabis, they look at, stoners and different things like that. But the thing was, my first introduction to a lot of cannabis users were people with degrees, like lots of degrees, people who you wouldn't even know. You're just all like, yo, what do you mean you smoked the J before you got here? Like, I can't even tell, and then like with CBD, there's, depending on which product, there's particular images that you see. But I'm looking for more of the commercials, just like the father coming home from work, or the mother getting off of work, and she's got kids, everything put together, and then she gets her bath water ready, and she's like dropping some essential oils, and then she's got like a CBD J, or just like the Valentine's Day commercial where like they're giving back rubs with like CBD lotions and different things like that. Like I'm trying
to looking for the market to normalize CBD.
Pretty much, yeah.
Into like daily life, which that helps with the culture,
mm-hmm.
but it wouldn't help if the manufacturers don't also take the initiative to educate, or the brand owners take the initiative to educate people when, CBD should be normalized. There's so many essential oil products out there nowadays where people are diffusing it, and like there's a whole movement to being more holistic and natural, and making sure that you try and get rid of whatever toxins you might be introducing to your daily intake. But we want to try and make sure that consumers know that they can ask questions, and just because it looks holistic, just because it looks like it should be safe, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And because that right there will hopefully open up a bunch of people to ask questions. And like, okay, like even vitamins should come with certificates of analysis. Those are, you know, they're plant derived often, the ones that are good. And so you also want to make sure that there's no pesticides, heavy metals, and the same exact thing where you don't want in our CBD, we don't want in our vitamins. And a lot of people, they're not asking the right questions and they're still buying. Like if the product doesn't provide it to you, if they don't answer your questions, then don't buy that. Don't support that business until they do. And then they will. They'll say, okay, a bunch of people are asking for this, we have to provide it now. And then that will make all of us safer. It will make the industry more responsible.
Do you think that a way to responsibly distribute, do you think, as you know, you have so many people that will be like, all right, well, I got like 100 plus products and da 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 da. Do you think that this is a game of quality versus quantity? Meaning, if you only have one product, but that one product is completely like good, then that'll be what you want to focus on as far as when we're looking at money, you know, because if the issue is, all right, well, it costs this amount as far as to do this, this, and this, which, you know, and when it comes to the health of, you know, your customers, it should be a no-brainer. But, you know, the fact that, you know, they're looking at all of these different things, that there's so many different gray areas with everything.
But yeah, I think you have to look at how this industry is operating. And so there are only a few manufacturers out there actually doing CBD. There are several brand owners, and those brand owners are contracting those manufacturers to make their products. And so it's a lot of the products that you buy are being made by the same manufacturer. Like a lot of the products we buy are being made by the same manufacturer. It's the thing is the brand owners aren't doing the appropriate due diligence to make sure that when they get the products that they order, to that they order it in bulk and they white label it, they need to make sure that every single lot that they receive is safe for consumption, because they have a close relationship with the manufacturer. If they receive a bunch of product that's contaminated or not what they ordered, then they can then go back to the manufacturer and be like, yo, you need to give me my money back or give me my products, you know? And then we don't have to get involved. You know, then when we order something and we test it and it is what it is, we can go about our business and distribute it. But manufacturers aren't doing that because it costs money to test the product. And then a lot of the products fail. So then they now have to fight with the manufacturer for their money back. And so it's just easier to sell it because they got a good brand.
I think we brought up a good point, like looking at the fact that that's something that I notice as well, you know, with throwing these fairs and markets. I do notice that you'll have a bunch of different brands, but, you know, their manufacturer is like all the same, you know. So as far as getting the information out to brands, it's like, what is something that a brand, when they're interacting with a manufacturer, and I know you touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but, you know, as far as like if I'm this brand, you know, and in my case, I mainly deal with the flower. Like that's pretty much it, you know. From the flower, then, you know, I can do, you know, all different types of things as far as with that. But even in that instance, as far as whether I put it in packaging or different things like that, that's what you're saying as far as like, boom, once that's done, that still needs to go get tested to make sure, you know.
Final product.
So with the brands themselves, what are something that you like best practices, almost like if they were going to go down a checklist and be like, all right, I want to make sure I'm responsibly distributing, you know, they go to this manufacturer and, you know, they what is something or a couple of things that they would need to make sure to cover their asses as far as like, you know, getting everything taken care of to where it's liable on the manufacturer as soon as they answer these questions and they're supposed to get what, you know, they asked for.
So there's, I guess, two different types of brands. There's the ones that order, like they send over their brand, what they want it to look like, what they want the packaging to look like, and the manufacturer does it all. Those brand owners where they get their final product from the manufacturer, all nice and branded, ready for distribution, they need to make sure every single lot that they order is sent off for additional laboratory testing. And they shouldn't just be, they need to do the works. They need to do, make sure there's the cannabinoid panels done, make sure the heavy metal panels done, pesticides, residual solvents. It all depends on if it's vape, they have, other microbiology, things like that, right? And then they can distribute it knowing that they did the testing and that the certificate of analysis from them, and it's not from the manufacturer with their label on it. Because a lot of times manufacturers say, oh yeah, we tested it, and they just slap the label on an old COA that passed, and then they send it to them, and then they send us that saying, yeah, it passed, we tested it. And that's not even, they didn't even test it. That's from the manufacturer. And there are labs that will put on whatever label, whatever company that wants to claim that they paid for the testing. And so we have to make sure as brand owners, right, that your product is what it says. It's your brand that's on the line here, because it comes to us and it fails. Now another party knows what's in your product. And God forbid, although there's a lot of researchers out there, the FDA is doing their testing. They go to a shop that your product, finds its way to the shelf, and they do the testing and it fails. Now, what do you have to do? Rebrand, because you just destroyed a brand that you really worked hard to build. There's the other ones that they buy the ingredients in bulk. You have to test those ingredients before you put them together to make sure that, and that's a bigger process. It costs more, but it assures it, and at the end you have to then test it as well. And so there's more risk when it comes to doing things that way, but it depends on how big the company is and how much funding they have. And then people decide which route they want to take. But there's at the end of the day, it's all about being ethical and making sure that when you are creating products for human consumption or animal consumption, that you're doing everything in your power to make sure that it's not going to hurt the individual in any way, and that your labels are accurate.
Yeah, that's 100% true, because that's my main thing as far as, especially here in Texas. I throw these fairs in different cities, so it's just like I interact with different people, and I want to make sure that they're very informed on what it is that they need to be doing, because sometimes like you said, this isn't the only field that's an issue with. Anything that we're dealing with dietary or that we're putting in your body is going to be subjected to that sometimes you don't see, a lot of times you don't see. So the last thing that I want to ask before I do the last outro thing is, so this whole quarantine, I've been on the search for something to binge watch. So I literally, like, I'll be lost in like some type of research with something, but I know that I need to have that moment of just like complete, just like let the thing just continue going. So whether on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, or whatever, what is something that you have or that you are binging right now?
I'm not binging anything at the current moment because I've just been consumed in work. But what I do is at the end of the night when I'm eating my dinner, which is like around midnight because I get lost with work. And so I start making food probably around 10 or 11. And I pretty much I will kind of do like, okay, Amazon, if I did Amazon the day before or Netflix the day before, then I'll do Hulu and see what new movies are on and just watch it. Sometimes I don't watch the whole thing because I typically click something that I just was like, that was horrible. But I don't have time to like do the research to find what's really good out there. I've heard like things about some Tiger King thing, but then I looked into it and I was just like, I don't know, it doesn't look like something for me. So I didn't even watch one. I didn't watch one episode. I don't know what's going on with that, but everyone's talking about that. But I just don't. Yeah, I don't. I watch all of Family Guy. I've like completely maxed out Family Guy and American Dad and the Cleveland Show. Like all the adult cartoons, I've completely finished.
Oh yeah, I think I was semi caught up with Rick and Morty.
Rick and
Uh,
Morty.
yeah, that's like probably one of my things. There's this show, one of the other guests had talked about called Devs. And I
What's
think
it
she
called?
Devs. Yeah,
I'll
it's
look
like
it
it
up.
has to deal with like quantum mechanics and like all types of like cool sci-fi stuff. And I was all like, oh, okay, I can definitely
It
deal
was
with that.
one called The Midnight Gospel. That one was pretty interesting.
Mm, I gotta check that one out. Yeah, because I heard that the Tiger King was like
Did you
this.
watch
There's
it?
no, I didn't get it. I didn't watch it because I was just like I would hear it, I would see, and then I was just like, this is a thing. I'm just like, what is going on?
I didn't see anything that attracted me to it, but apparently so many people were attracted to it. I haven't heard one thing that someone says about it that makes me want to watch it.
Right. I think at some point I wanted to like write a song in regards to this randomness, just compared it to, but I was just like, I don't even know. Because I think his name, the guy, his name, I think was like pretty cool. I was just all like, oh, your name is like really freaking cool. But like everything, like, I really don't know. I just know it's a dude with a tiger and they call him Tiger King and it's like a reality or I don't know, something, but I didn't get a chance to get into it. I really kind of like fantasy because like I do so much research in like real life stuff. So anything that's just gonna completely take me somewhere else. Oh, the question I did want to ask, and I thought about this actually a while ago. How do you? Because I think this is a big question. I'm like a Capricorn sun, so I'm like ruled by Saturn. So I love time, everything that has to deal with time. And so, how are you managing your time, either during the quarantine or general? How are you managing your day for success?
So I thought I was used to working virtually, but then the quarantine just took virtual and like put it on steroids. So like everything now is Zoom, or meetings or Google Hangouts or there's another one. Like I literally have all of the virtual meeting apps downloaded now. And it's just you have to, for me, I'm kind of exhausted with it a little bit because even though I'm so used to working virtually, when now that everyone else is working virtually, everyone is always available. And so it's like extended the workday. and like I averaged like a 2 week return time, like response time on things that weren't like specifically really urgent. And now that's like I can't. I have to work extra. That's why I'm eating later now because it's impossible. There's not enough time in the day anymore. But it's also been it honestly, COVID hurt our conference schedule really badly because we were scheduled to, and we were also scheduled to teach cannabis medicine to groups of doctors and at medical centers and just like broad teach like several classes and teach them about the pharmacology behind it, because there's a lot of cannabis medicine courses that aren't really teaching anything about the actual mechanism of action and the actual endogenous cannabinoids that are like affiliated, that we now know and what they do, and all, even the phytocannabinoids, like they don't actually get into that. It's all about anecdotal data, these courses. And so we like get into the real science as it's currently documented. And we were scheduled to start like this whole thing in March, like right when COVID hit. So and we were going to go to Amsterdam. We were going to go to Barcelona. We were like, we had so many plations to go, but
Oh
it all
my
shut
goodness.
down.
Yeah, that was like my main thing. I had planned another trip as far as Japan that had to be postponed. I had stuff set up for South by that was complete. Like I was like there like literally a couple of days prior. There was just like, no, they're not gonna shut down South by. And then like South by Southwest is officially canceled. I'm like, what? Like, what in the world is going on? And then like everything started canceled. There was like a couple of like cannabis shows, a couple of like CBD trades and everything. And I was just like, whoa. And with me being a musician, so a good chunk of the majority of my income came from either me performing at live events, throwing live events, or vending at live events. and it was just all like like completely gone. But then like as soon as this started, I had watched this webinar, and the lady was just like, honestly, if you built your foundation, you know, on live shows, because live shows have always been unpredictable. And she was just like, if you built a foundation on live shows, this is your time to switch it up and work, do as far as the foundational stuff. So that way you have that that online foundation. Because, you know, I don't have to worry about the weather, you know, with my online
That's true.
store and different things like that. So now, before I let you go, I always ask all of my guests if they have some words of wisdom or some tips for people during this time, and where can they find you at on online?
Well, I'm on social media at Nadia Bodkin, like on Instagram, on Facebook, Twitter. They can find Blaze at Blaze Therapeutics or Blaze Therapy, and then so our website is blazetherapeutics.com. And then if you want to check out New Love, there it's newloveculture.com, and or you can just follow the hashtag New Love or hashtag Human Culture. And I guess words of wisdom for COVID time, honestly, stay healthy, because that's all you got is like your immune system. And if you do acquire COVID, then it's super important to rest and not overdo it and stress your system out, because you know it's like any other infection. You want to make sure that you're eating healthy, that you're watching what you eat, that you're exercising, you're putting your body at its best ability to fight any infection, whether it's COVID or the flu or anything. You want to make sure that whether you have rare diseases or not, or any other chronic condition, you want to make sure your body's in the best position to fight these microorganisms and viruses. So watch what you eat.
Yes, yes. And, you know, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and everybody that's tuned in. Make sure you check out the site and the social media, so that way you can learn more, especially if you're a brand vendor. These are going to be the people to speak to make sure you're doing responsible distributing. So for everybody that's tuned in, thank y'all for tuning into the Texas CBD Fair Market. Nadia, thank you so much for being an awesome guest, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right. See ya.
All right. Bye.